Chapter 31, I think you see a stark contradiction, or a stark difference between how to perform, how the covenant was performed under law and how now the covenant is performed under grace. In chapter 31, you see the Israelites come in and destroy the Midianites, utterly destroyed them, killed the men, the young men, and the women of age. And they then took the younger women with them to raise them, and they should have been raised properly. They shouldn't have been treated as slaves in a sense of like how we see slavery in the early United States. They should be taken in and cared for. And a lot of people that don't read the Bible, but maybe they go to church and they've heard of stories of the New Testament. If they get to this, they're shocked. Or I've even heard Christians be totally shocked when they were told that God told the Israelites to do a thing like this. But you got to understand, God was working differently in this time, and God chose Israel to be a tool for His justice. And the death of the Midianites was just, as so my death is just. I'm in the same spot as the Midianites. If God would have put the Israelites to death, it would have been just. He can put the whole world to death and it be just. But He chose to have grace and mercy. It's not unfair that God let Israel do what they did to the Midianites. Now, I know y'all don't have a struggle with that, like when you read the scriptures, but maybe somebody online watching might. But there is people out there who do. And I want you guys to be prepared if someone says to you, well, how could God let such a thing happen? And being able to prepare with an answer, because we're called to have an answer for what we believe, and to always be able to answer. I think it says either in Peter or Timothy, always have an answer there, ready. And we don't always have to know everything.
Right now, Hamas has got a big issue with it.
Oh yeah, Hamas, yeah. Well, you take Hamas, and this is a fitting chapter to see compared to what Hamas is doing. These people. The difference between Hamas and this right here is a lot. But one of the main differences is they're not coming in and wipe people out just because they're of different faith. They're wiping people out because they're a tool used by God when these people were literally sending their women in to trip them up. And it was also a different time. These Israelites just came through the Red Sea, just seen all these miracles done. And the Midianites had every reason in the world to say, let's go with them. Every reason in the world, because God was literally unveiling His power that He had through the Israelites. And the Midianites knew, and every Midianite that wanted to had the ability to go and be with Israel and join with Israel. And they didn't. What the Hamas is doing is they're trying to kill everyone. Like their main goal of the Hamas is to kill everyone who is not of Muslim faith, so they can create a new world with Muslim faith. That wasn't the goal of the Israelites. The Israelites were to welcome them in, But God also used the Israelites as a tool for justice. Think of it as criminal punishment, right? Or what is it when someone's hung to death or killed? Is that criminal punishment? Is that what that's called? Capital? Capital, yeah, or corporal. Capital punishment. We don't hold our governors to blame for that murder, right? We say, no, that person killed or maybe killed multiple people, raped some people. We put them to death, right? Because that's what our government's for. Well, Israel was a nation with governments, and God was using them as a tool. So with the Hamas, it's a whole lot different because they're punishing people for doing right. They're saying if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you will be put to death. And they also don't have a word from God to do so. They think they do, but they don't. It doesn't matter what we think. It matters what's the truth.
So are they different than ISIS was?
Well, ISIS and Hamas are the same headed beasts. They're both, yeah, they're both the same. I mean, they're a little bit different, but they both have the same end goal as any if anyone takes the Quran to its radical extent, if
Eradicate.
the infidel, anyone who's not a Christian, or sorry, anyone who's not of Muslim faith, put a gun, if they either come to Muslim faith, let them walk, let them live. If they don't, kill them, right? And that's the extent of their religion. And there are Muslims here in this country that they can't take their book literal, okay? We can. You know what a radical Christian does? A radical Christian sells everything he has and moves the bush or goes over to Hamas and preaches the word. That's taking this book to the radical extreme. You take the Quran to the radical extreme, you're strapping bombs to yourself and running into elementary schools. That's a big difference. But see, your Muslims in this country, I'm talking about your Muslims that are doctors, your Muslims that are working in the schools. They don't take the Quran to its literal. They can't. But then you have some that are here that do. Now, thank God, there's a small number of those. It's not. If you have a majority country of Muslims, then that's what you get when you go to Iran. You have a majority country of Muslims where when the majority has the rule, when they see a woman in the street not covered up, they beat her to a pulp because they have the majority, right? Thank God that's not here. But where this differs is, one, they have a legit command from God to do what they have to do. I dropped some. And it's just. It's just to carry that out. So that's a huge difference there. And they're also not glorifying in the deaths of those things, right? They should never. The Hamas they glorify in the deaths. They'll take the people's heads and put it on a stake, and it gets worse than that. To call it demonic is something to lightly. I think it's beyond. It's insane. But God chose this broken people to be His tool, right? And we can say, okay, Lord, if you're not okay with that, then you're not okay with Him choosing you for the task He's called you to, right? Thank God we're not in war. He hasn't called us to war. And this is a different time, a different covenant. We're called now to not bear arms, actually to love our enemies. So it's a whole different game. But in 19, you see where God has, He calls them to purify themselves and to purify the nation because what they done needed purification for. And so if God was looking at this as He sent the Israelites in to wipe out the Midianites, if He was looking at this and laughing or saying, way to go, good job, or saying, it didn't affect His heart, why would He then call them to purify themselves? He hates it. He hates that it has to be done this way. I mean, His original creation, was there any death in it at all? No. It's like, I have a child, and when I have my child, I'm thinking, I can't wait to throw baseball with this child. I can't wait to teach this child about the Lord. I'm not thinking, man, I can't wait to punish this child when he does wrong. You don't have that thought. God, but it has to be done. The Bible says if you don't discipline your children, you don't love them. It says that in Psalms. It says if you don't discipline your children, you hate them. Because if you don't do that, what happens, And so if God doesn't step in and stop the Midianites, it's just evil after evil after evil will be done. And it's the same way in this world today. I don't know what's going to happen to the Hamas, but they all will stand to face God. I don't know if Israel's going to wipe them out. I don't know what's going to happen on the earth, but I do know that they will have to stand before God, and that's a scary thing. But any of us,
I want to say it's someplace in here where about Israel that anybody goes up against them that they are going to lose.
Yeah, but you got to understand that's under the old covenant. Yeah. So, and remember the old covenant is you do good, you get good. So if Israel's not doing good, following the Mosaic law, they got wiped out. We'll see. Half this Old Testament is going to be Israel's failures. They're not going to prosper as a nation. the land he's calling them to, the promised land, they never inhabited the whole thing that he called them to. He called them to an area of land, and they only get like 40% of it because they never do walk rightly under the law. So everything, now, understanding that in the spiritual sense, how now we have been grafted in, and that God's not just dealing with physical. He's not just dealing with the physical blood children of Abraham, but he's dealing with the people of a faith. So what that scripture means is when someone comes against you, you can say, as long as you're standing on Christ, He'll protect me, right? Whoever comes against me. Now, does that always mean physical? No. Peter and Paul. Peter and Paul, they were all blood of Abraham, plus they were followers of Jesus Christ and were killed, martyred, over and over and over. But they could still claim that verse, just like they could claim God works all things for the good for those who love Him. They could claim that promise, even though they were beheaded, even though they were burnt to death, hung on a pole. They could claim that. So you see, God ain't working with this. Now, He's still sovereign over it, and He does amazing things. Papaw could have died out in the hospital, but He didn't allow it. People have been cured of terminal, cancer like that. He still works with us, but He's worried about you. He's not worried, but He's concentrating on you, who Rick is, who Della is. You're not this. It's part of you now, and it also will be part of you in the future, but you'll have a new body. And so, understanding, should we go against the people of Israel? No, we should work with them. But if they start committing evil atrocities, say if Israel started to cut babies' heads off, right? Should we stand with that? Of course not. No. So it's like, but understanding the Old Testament in its context, and you'll see Israel gets demolished multiple times. They'll have the ark stolen. They lose the Ten Commandments. They don't even know where they're at. It gets really crazy. But what I think is interesting about here in 19, I'm going to read 19 through 24. It says, "And as for you, remain outside of the camp 7 days. Whoever has killed any person, whoever has touched any slain, purify yourself and your captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th day." Now remember, what's the idea with purifying? Well, God's living among. The idea is that God is living among them within that tabernacle, within the Holy of Holies. That's His throne. The ark is where He sits. And so for you to come near Him, to have blood on your hands, is just a contradiction. It's just, and He's trying to heighten, in areas like this, you have to allow Him to heighten His holiness, knowing also He's full of grace and mercy. But He wants to show you how holy He is. So when I say something like you can't come before God as a murderer, also know He has mercy and grace. Without that mercy and grace, though, you can't come. Like it's contradictory to His person. So He tells them to purify themselves. In 20, purify every garment, everything made of leather, everything woven of goat's hair, everything made of wood. So wash pure everything. Why? Because this is not what God intended. Now, when I say that, I know that God's sovereign from the beginning to the end. But when He made man, He gave them a choice, right? And His intention for man was to live in harmony with Him, to walk with Him, not to have to kill his neighbor, not to have to walk through that. But you see, God has made a way for us to come in. At that time, it was these rituals, these purifications that washed them clean, that now they're clean and they can come in before God. Now what is it? It's the blood of Christ. It's the blood of Christ. And it's not just for the murderer, it's for the one who looks with hatred in his heart and has committed murder in his heart. So we can come to Him, but we also don't lower Him. We say He is holy and pure and perfect, but He has washed me clean with His word, with His blood, with His sacrifice on my behalf. But when I think of God and I read in chapter 31 this devastation that He has allowed, and then I see in 19 that He now commands them to purify themselves, It breaks God's heart. It breaks God's heart. He said He doesn't have any pleasure of the death of the wicked. He doesn't sit there and laugh and think, oh man, you finally got what you were coming. It breaks His heart. But He knows, okay, you've sacrificed enough children. You've done enough. I've given you 400 years. The Midianites had 400 years. Maybe longer. That's all we know. 400 years. And so I just see the heart of God there, where people would say in 31, well, that's a mean, ruthless God. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I remember what Kinsey said the other day. She said, you got people that says, why didn't God wipe out all the bad people in the world? And at the same time, they say, when they read a story like this where God wipes out the bad people, they say, well, God's evil. Can't win on that, either one. Plus, if God wiped out all the bad people, none of us... No. We need Him. We need mercy. We need grace. Okay. So, then Eleazar the priest said to the men of war who had gone to battle, this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord commanded Moses. Only the gold, the silver and bronze, and the iron and the tin, and the lead, everything that can endure fire, you shall put through the fire, and it shall be clean. So God, even the stuff that they've brought back, right? Because they've gone in, they've wiped the Midianites out, and they've brought back things. He says you have to purify, and it's all spiritual. It's all, if you're going to bring this in, it needs to be clean. We need to rid the thought and the lifestyle and what it took to get this stuff out of our minds, and we need to purify that and know that it's been given to you by the Lord. And it's all dirty to the Lord. This killing and things like that is not what He's pleased in. It has to be purified. That's why He's going to make a whole new world, a whole new everything, because it's going to be pure. But that being said, He's not done with it, and He can't wash His hands of it. He don't want to just throw us away. So He comes down in it, and He directs it. And in this time, He directed them to execute justice. And then He gifted Israel with a gift of mercy. Israel didn't deserve all the gold and things they bring back, but He's chosen to have mercy on them. And just like in Romans, if I choose, I have mercy on whom I want to have mercy. I have mercy on whom I have mercy. And I have compassion on whom I have compassion. And I harden who I want to harden. And so you say, and Paul says, well, you say to God, what am I supposed to do then? He says, who are you to talk back to God? That's how he answers him with that. He doesn't give him a big explanation of how it goes. He just says, who are you to talk back to God? It didn't work very well with Job, but God was still gentle with Job, I don't understand everything God does, but I believe He's just, and I have faith. And because of that faith, He says He's going to let me live with Him forever. And it says, everything that, 24, and you shall wash your clothes on the seventh day and be clean, and afterward you may come into camp. So they were to stay totally outside of camp from that. Okay. Now the Lord, what time we got, Dad?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, count up the plunder that was taken, of man and beast, you and Eleazar the priest, and the chief fathers of the congregation, and divide the plunder into 2 parts between those who took part in war, who went out to battle, and all the congregation. So I think this is so cool because you very rarely see a soldier that is content with his wages. You ever heard that saying? A soldier's never content with his wages? I think that's a common saying. I don't know. But most soldiers, you fight in war. What can you get? What more do you deserve? If you fight for my life and you protect me, you deserve the spoils, right? If you come back, and God says, look, take all the plunder that these soldiers have fought, and remember, it's only 12,000 men, and all that stuff they brought back, and the soldier's going to get half of all that, and the rest will divide among the people. That's pretty fair. Those people are the ones, and I don't know if they went through the Midianites and nobody died. It doesn't say. Maybe they did, and not a one died, but maybe one died. Maybe a few died. It's war. Did God protect every single one? he protected their soul if they were a believer. But it doesn't say in Scripture if not a one of them passed, not a one of them died. I know the earlier war that they fought where Moses had to hold up the rod, remember they were losing the battle when he dropped his arm. So what does that mean when you're losing a battle of war? People are dying. So there was casualties in that war. I don't know about this war, but anyway, they gave their life to do this. They trusted the Lord, but so I just think that's neat that he gave them that. And a levy, a tribute for the Lord on the men of war who went out to battle, one of every 500 of the persons, the cattle, the donkeys, and the sheep. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as a heave offering to the Lord. And it says, from the soldiers, take part of that and give to the priests, or not only to the priests, but to God. Because ultimately, God gives you the victory. If they would have went into war without God's consent, they would have died. It's the same thing with us. I mean, I love how Jesus says, Jesus knows the end from the beginning. He has, the Pharisees in the Old Testament would memorize the Old Testament. They would have the whole Old Testament memorized. That was like part of being a Pharisee. Isn't that crazy? I mean, I'm trying to memorize a small passage right now, and I'm having trouble with it. They had to memorize the whole Testament, the Old Testament. That's insane. But Jesus knew from back to forward, and he said, I never spoke unless I heard my Father. Right? I never went left or right without his blessing. And I think, well, if Jesus needs that, how much more do I need that? Yeah, I can study the Word, and you should, and we should study the Word. It helps us discern His voice because we got a lot going on in our flesh, in our mind. So discerning God's voice, because He speaks a lot in a whisper. You know, people say to me, I've never heard the voice of God. I said, well, are you listening? You know, are you only going to hear Him if He screams? You know? Or do you listen for Him? One of the pastors I like, his name's John Wimber. He talks about how God will speak to him in impressions and just some of the slightest of ways. And they said, well, if God's real, why does He speak in such slight ways? He said, I'm not sure, but I found it's a lot easier to hear Him when I come about it His way and not mine. I don't ask Him to change His language, you know. I just try to speak His, you know. And here, they were told about to go a certain way. And if we slow down and listen to God, we say, God, where do you want me in this? You go slow. Y'all ever seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge? Remember that movie? Hacksaw Ridge was about a war. He was in World War II, and he was a soldier, but he made a promise with God that he'd never hurt nobody when he was young, because he hit his brother with a rock and he thought he killed him. Okay, when he was little, and he made a promise, I'm never going to hurt nobody. And everybody was going to World War II. Everybody was getting drafted, and he just didn't want to go. And finally, he went, but he said, "I'm not going to fight." And I remember his dad told him, "Man, you can't go. You can't go to war. You got to sit and pray about everything." He said, "You got to sit and think." He said, "Before you go outside, you sit and think." He said, "You won't last." He told him, but that stuck with me. That idea of go slow, slow down. And turn everything off and get with God. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio, and slow down a little bit and just hear Him. And a lot of times people don't like to slow down and turn off stuff because they start to feel this feeling of uneasiness. Well, I tell you what, if you turn everything off and you feel a feeling of uneasiness, it's because something's not right in your heart. And you got to slow down and you got to work on that. Don't drown that uneasiness out with TV and radio, because you're missing out. When you turn everything off and you got unrest in your heart, ask the Lord. Ask the Lord. This is what I do. God, I'm running from something. Show me what it is. And it ain't ever something. It's usually not something big that you're gonna have to climb a mountain. It's just He wants your heart. He really wants you to slow down and say, take a breath and say, Father, show me where you're at today, because I need you. Because I mean, especially today's time, like the young kids, they always got earbuds, and you can all entertainment is so everywhere. I mean, I got a phone that I got unlimited internet on this phone. I can have an earbud in my, and there's always something entertaining to watch and listen to, and you know, and plus I got the boys, I mean, stuff going around, but it's just taking time to, because you don't know what, a lot of times you can't trace all your thoughts. You can't until you slow down and you get away from everybody and you say, okay, God, you know, I'm here. Speak to me in that. And that's where He can guide you. And not only in that, but in decisions in your life, you know, just slowing down and saying, okay, like Jesus did, you know, I only say what the Father tells me, you know, and it's like, whoa, what discipline Jesus had. Imagine if you could, you know, James says, if you can control your tongue, you can control everything. You'll be perfect. That's what James says. And that's where Jesus was. He was able to go slow, calm, and easy with the Lord. That the only things that come out of His mouth was what He heard the Father say. Oh, that would be nice. And then you look at the words of Jesus. He said some hard things. It wasn't.
Another movie that was Gary Cooper, I think, and called Sergeant York. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
And he was I mean, he's fighting, drank, and carrying on, and everything.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and then all of a sudden, he got saved. One night lightning hit him.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he got saved, but he started reading the Bible, and it says, "Thou shalt not kill."
Yeah.
But then he had to go to war.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't go because he was what
Yeah.
do you call it? What's that? Objector.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the same thing
so he
happened.
wouldn't go because he wouldn't fight.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Same
But
thing.
then we went in there, and he seen that all the other guys were getting killed, getting shot. He had to do something to stop them.
Yeah.
So he captured. I mean, this is a true story.
Yeah.
I mean, how many did he capture at one time? I mean,
He's from Tennessee.
the hundreds of hundred. I don't know how many.
32, I think, or something like that.
It was in the hundreds, wasn't it? He called.
Yeah, it
they
was
captured.
hundreds.
It was in the hundreds.
It was hundreds.
I mean, he just kept on. They all dropped their guns down, but anyway, when he come back, they give him a house and some land and everything because what
Good.
he'd done made him out a hero.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be one, but
That's how this man
he
was.
He
Yeah.
didn't do it. He didn't do it to fight to take lives.
Yeah.
He did it to save lives.
Yeah. This man, he became a medic in the military, and he ended up. You should watch the story. It's called Hacksaw Ridge. He saves. I mean, he saves. I don't know. And God, it was just by God's grace. I mean, they were sending just missiles after missiles after missiles, and he was just running around. And you know,
Mountaintop.
yeah,
I've seen it.
yeah. You really should watch that movie. It's incredible.
If you've never seen it, y'all watch it.
Yeah, it's called Hacksaw Ridge. Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
Clint Eastwood. It's an awesome.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But
Did he direct it?
Clint Eastwood directed it.
let's pray. Let's pray for Sonia. She's still not feeling good.